And you are pretty much all in when it comes to Labour. You have backed the Greens in the recent past. So just tell me, why the shift? What's done that for you?
Well, I backed the Greens. I backed Lib Dems. I donate to Greenpeace and people like that. Just all people that are trying to make the world a better place. In this election, I think it's super important to get behind Labour because they have the chance to form a government. I think we need them to have the biggest majority possible so they can make the big changes that we need to see happen. And that's all that's happening. I haven't turned my back on anybody or anything like that. I still got a lot of friends in the Green Party. It's just my focus is on getting Labour elected because there'll be a Green government.
Right. I mean, it does look as if, doesn't it, as if right here in Bristol, the Green Party, the candidate is, I've been talking to her, Cara Denya, the co-leader of the Green Party. They look as if they're going to get some pretty significant support. A couple of polls suggest they may even beat the shadow cabinet minister, Thangam Debonair, in this Bristol Central seat. So that support, there's many people who care about or worried about the environment. They're switching away from Labour and backing the Greens. What would you say to them?
I would say it makes more sense to support Labour because they have a proper green manifesto. They have really ambitious plans, like to get to 100% green electricity by 2030, which I think will be hard to achieve and a great achievement if we pull it off. That's doubling more than the amount of green electricity on the grid today in just 5 years. And I would say it makes more sense to support Labour. They can form a government, and it makes more sense to have a shadow cabinet member as your representative in Parliament, I would say, than a possible lone Green MP. But that's just my opinion. The first part, the Green government part, I think that's an unarguable fact.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, I mean, the opinion polls say what they say, and they all bear out your basic judgment on that. I wonder when you're moving around, Al. I know about your convictions and your deep convictions. I wonder if you come across many people who give you an argument on the cost of green policy and green initiatives in putting up the cost of goods and services for people who are already feeling the cost of living squeeze. Have you got sympathy for that argument and those people?
No, it's a false narrative. It comes from the Conservatives. We're seeing Reform repeat it, but they're all cut from the same cloth, I would say. It's a false narrative. We published a report, John. It was only 2 days ago. It's called The Real Cost of Cutting the Green Crap. It looks at what Cameron did 10 years ago. He made 4 policy changes, anti-green changes, and we costed them, and they've added 15 billion to the nation's energy bills in the subsequent decade. Last year, it added £1,500 to the energy bills of the worst affected people. It's a false argument to say we can't afford the green transition and we have to slow down. The truth is actually the opposite.
Yeah, well, it was the Labour Party which, to an extent, rather watered down its ambitions, its green ambitions. They were concerned that some of it was not necessarily affordable at a different time. You saw that happen. You weren't, I think, happy about that. I'm thinking about the scale of the Green Investment Fund that was scaled down.
Yeah, we're talking about the 28 billion, and I wasn't unhappy about that at the time. Yeah. I said, look, I think it makes sense. I wasn't unhappy. It makes sense. Like, 28 billion is a lot of money. Labour made the pledge 2-3 years previous when the economy was in a very different place. It was the figure that the Climate Change Committee came up with as a sum we need to spend every year to get to net zero. So it made sense for that reason. But it made sense for me, for Labour to say, we aren't going to commit to spending pledges that we don't know that we can meet. They didn't know when the election was going to be at that time or, the state of the nation's finances precisely. So I think it doesn't matter. Because to get to 100% green electricity on the grid, we need no public money. We need no borrowing. Private sector can do that. The wind and the sun, they need no support. So I'm pretty relaxed about it. I don't think it's watering down Labour's commitment to the green economy. I think it was just one spending pledge. They said they would take away, really, and say, look, we'll spend what we can afford, which is entirely pragmatic.
Well, okay, so you support the idea, but, there were those inside the party who were definitely disappointed about that. But, I mean, that, in a sense, we went through that argument at the time, and now voters can make up their mind about all of that. Can I just, while we got you just for a minute more, I'm guessing you've been asked about this maybe quite a few times, but we've seen some high-profile protests and demonstrations in recent days. The painting of the King's portrait, the spraying of Stonehenge. You have supported Just Stop Oil. You're not a Just Stop Oil protester, but do those protests in any way offend you?
No. I'm just going to say no. The Stonehenge one is a really interesting example, John. Both leaders came out and condemned Just Stop Oil for what they did. Turns out they used corn flour, which will wash away with the next rain. So it was quite harmless, really. But behind that was the thing that's unknown to most people, which is that our government have overturned planning advice for a tunnel underneath the site of Stonehenge. Archaeologists say we'll lose 500,000 artifacts to put a piece of the A303, 3 kilometers long, underneath the site of Stonehenge. The UN have called this a very damaging thing. Stonehenge is now going to be on the list of World Heritage Sites that are in danger because of what the Tories are doing. So entirely hypocritical for Rishi Sunak to say, oh my God, are they doing to this lovely national monument when he is doing such far greater harm?